off down to earth. Today is Friday, September. The World Trade Center towers in New York. They shortly thereafter the Pentagon. And none of us who were alive then can forget. For some reason, when the memorial happened this morning, it took me back to that day. And I remember how I felt sitting on my couch in my living room in Orlando, Florida, and real. At first, I thought they were showing a flick, a pic. If the first plane had made a mistake and struck the tower, then we saw a second plane. Terribly wrong. It was a wake-up call for us. Since my youngest daughter was born about 9 months later, and because everybody needed comfort, just a moment of transparency. And it sort of was that moment that brought us all together and reminded us that we're all American. I can't forget how I felt when everything had to stand still for a while. And we too, how we couldn't make phone calls, like the networks were all down. So you didn't have family members who were injured. I had friends who had children, talk to folks. And so on this day, we pause to remember the brave men and women of the NYPD and the New York Fire Department who rushed into danger and who got as many people as possible. And of course, essential workers, the frontline workers, the folks who, the nurses and the doctors and the hospital and trauma centers around New York, Gazi. The folks on the subways because they shut the subways down that ended at the World Trade Center towers. They had to bypass that track to go into Long Island, and people, you couldn't get on the train. The trains didn't work, so people were literally walking, people just walking. And women who went to work that just put their gym shoes on and just kept walking back home from downtown Manhattan to back to Long Island. It was quite the thing. My ex-husband and I had just about been divorced because it was early. It was 2001. Had moved to New York, and he called to say, "How are you guys doing?" I'm like, "I'm in Florida. How are you doing?" And when he began to describe what it felt like, how it felt, he said it was like war all over again. It was as if that in an atmosphere like that, any leader could ever refer to people who serve and call them suckers and losers. As much as we disagree about policing and disagree about excessive force the police use, especially puts on a uniform and step out into danger, an unknown, unseen danger every day, a sucker or a loser. I disagree of the police force by white nationalists. I totally disavow that. But for the men and women who choose this as an occupation, not for any other agenda, but to serve their family, that I were as brave as they are. If I was having breakfast with my youngest daughter this morning, and I could look at her and tell her she wasn't even born yet when 9/11 happened. It was kind of, you look at her like, you weren't even born, you can't begin to imagine what that was like. So it's very sobering. Wow. So we're going to take a moment of silence. Just where the coronavirus is killing Americans, we need something to happen. So a moment of silence. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me this morning. I want to talk in this day and age of technology and the fact whatever they want, people have access to more information and materials to suit their lifestyles and to suit the way they feel they should conduct themselves than before. and into this naturally, scour the web looking for information. But then there are people who are serving their own queer, I shouldn't say queer, but their own peculiar needs, their own disgusting, able to catch child pornographers. And I can't tell you how the rest of us are happy about that. Aren't you happy? I am happy. I am happy about that because child pornography increased. About a year ago here in Michigan, a couple were sentenced and prosecuted because they could pay and watch. Can you imagine? They could think of no other industry or enterprise but to have children. Imagine how sick you must be. Sit down and contemplate that you will get pregnant, carry the baby for 9 months, give birth to the baby for the sole purpose of having sex with that baby. And I know you don't get your panties up in a bunch that this is some Christian spectacle jumping all over you. Perversion is what it is. Having sex with children is not normal. Having sex with children is perversion. I don't care if it happens. So the law says if you're over 18, you're an adult, then sex should take place between people who agree to have sex. The law says that's why there is a law on the age of consent in most states, because a person who is not emotionally mature enough cannot consent to protect the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable are seniors and children and women. We know we're hoping that most of the society will respond to us in a kind manner. Women are raped. Women are forced into having sex, and then you go into a justice system that makes it sound like you were asking for it. The perception from society is that, well, you must have wanted it, or you must have indicated to him that you wanted it. That's why there are laws governing to regain some of the control and power over your life. As a survivor of sexual violence myself to any of my children, I'm looking straight into this camera right here and letting you know. I have two daughters. If any of them ever come home and say something like that, or if they ever have to call me one day with their voice trembling to say something like that, that person, whoever he is or she, whoever they think they might be, there is no power on the face of the earth that they will find like mine. I promise you that, because sexual violence will have residual effects that last some of us a lifetime. I was sexually violated as a child, as a 6-year-old child, by an adult male, not by a 6-year-old boy, not by a 12-year-old boy or a 16-year-old boy, by an entire adult male old enough to be my grandfather. I cannot begin to tell you the traumatic effects that caused me for the rest of my life. And still, I'm a work in progress. It took me years to overcome some of the sexual barriers. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, sexual violence, children, sexual violence as a construct is bad, but to children, it's even worse. And something has to be done about it. We cannot, as a society, consider ourselves to be an advanced society or to be even civilized if we continue to condone and allow sexual violence against children to pervade, to continue as if children have no recourse. Over and over again in the last couple of days, we have seen where the FBI has conducted raids and freed children who were declared missing. So the children are declared missing, they disappear, they're taken off neighborhood streets while they're walking, they're taken while they're on their way home from schools, and they target children. They look for children whose parents are not empowered. When I say empowered, I mean not valuable. Therefore, if they start talking about their child is up missing, the society dismisses them. They're lost. They don't. Some of whom don't elected to go with a sex trafficker because she felt she needed liberation. The mother's point of view. So even though the mother herself was gravely ill, she was fighting to get her child back because she knows that that child is going to be hurt forever and a day. For many of you, this is an uncomfortable subject. Some of you have not even come forward or come about that. I sincerely regret that. And I express my sympathies to you, But I also want to encourage you that when you are ready to speak up, do so. And I pray that you get to that point in your journey. There are also many people who, whilst it didn't happen to you, you knew it happened to someone you knew and loved, someone you know, because their description and their behavior is often not explained. It's much like in your own home. You can tell a child who has been sexually violated, they become withdrawn, they act out. When children start acting out and become withdrawn, it's time to go deeper and start asking questions. What happened? Is there something going on? Please tell me. Work at breaking down their own barriers so you can help them. Because people who have sex with children, people who pursue children do not quit and do not give up. Sometimes they're the nicest people. Your daughter, because they're sick and disgusting, and they work on the child's vulnerabilities. Anything that is going on in the child's home, they're going to use it as an entryway. And they work at breaking down the child's barriers until they achieve what they want to achieve. People who have sex with children have a it is my pledge. If I catch one of you, I swear to God, you're going to pray to God and you're going to need God's help because you have hurt people. The story I'm about to read to you is very disturbing. What I'm going to tell you based on this article I read is very, very disturbing. It concerns people who have sex with toddlers. So help me, God, they're grown today. When I tell you it is by the grace, being a parent and being a vigilante, being a parent and having to hover to make sure that our children stay children until it is time for them to graduate to the next level of their journey, as their life journey. We need to let children be children. There are enough problems in the world today. Our children today had to grow up suddenly. Children who were in high school, suddenly the next phase of their development, of their psychological development, all of a sudden overnight they had to grow up with the sudden realization that as a group of people, they're going to have to learn lessons so that suddenly we're trusting what I'm saying. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in this situation where we're one minds. Have you ever watched Law and Order SVU? You get a pretty good idea of who these miscreants are. Yes, they're miscreants and perverts. And they better not walk across my path. I promise you. Because it's a tool that is available for law enforcement called Child Protection System. It's developed by an outfit in Florida, a nonprofit called Rescue Coalition. And what they developed was a tool that enables them to scan people's computers to see what is on your computers of children. You ain't got no privacy left. You have no claim to any kind of privacy, period. Pictures of her until she became 15 or 16, and they type in specifics of what they want, and computer algorithms lead them to what they want. Y'all stop posting pictures of your young children. Would you? It's not cute. Stop it. There are child pornographers out there who are hitting your children. And then your children end up missing and their faces are on the back of a milk carton. Stop it, will you people? Stop posting pictures of your children in their bathtubs. Yes, it's cute. Take the picture and text it to your mom and your dad and your cousins who want to look at it. Don't post those pictures to your Facebook page and think it's okay. They have pictures of your house with the address, the street number. Take it off, will you? The Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, master child molester, master sex trafficker of children, with his accomplices. You know who they are. One of them who is in a powerful office today, right? Whose wife came over on that. He had such a system that was so efficient. He even had standards. He even had barriers or boundaries. He didn't want black women, and he didn't. They couldn't be black. You have to listen, thank the Lord, because that means his sexual abuse was confined. Hello, somebody. There are people in one of the stories on Netflix. Epstein paid a guy paid Epstein to have sex with 12-year-old twin girls from France. They flew over. on the Epstein visa, landed on a private jet, and were paid. This man paid a lot of money for him to have sex with 12-year-old girl teenagers. They were twins. Are you listening to me? Child pornography happens right in front of us. It could be your neighbor. And your neighbor, he doesn't look like a child every day and goes to work, whether he wears a suit to work or he wears shirt and tie, or he's the plumber, or he's the gardener. A man told me years ago that we are so vulnerable we don't even realize it. The people whom we let into our homes, the plumber, the people who know our homes because we bring them in to police show up and they ask questions, answer the darn questions. Because don't get defensive. They're gonna ask you who comes to your house. Answer the question. Because 9 out of 10 times it's someone who is very familiar and comfortable with your household. This is why they say when murder or something, right? Be very, very careful when you have children. So many of us are just so wide open. We don't even know. Have you ever looked at your husband's laptop? Why is he on the internet while you're asleep? I'm very suspicious of that. If he's on the internet while you're asleep whenever you're out of the home, you need to go have access to that bad boy. He's looking at something he does not want. You lose your face in the community and you lose everything. So why not while I'm asleep? Ask questions. It's amazing to me how we let things slide. You know something is wrong, but you're not doing anything about it. Why is he always traveling? Have you asked that question? He travels a lot for work. Have you ever taken a flight behind him to see if he's actually doing that? Have you ever turned on the location settings on his phone to see where he actually is? Why you didn't pick up on the way home? You see now, then they make it sound like you're suspicious, but these are questions that need answers. I don't want the feds to show up at my house while I'm thinking I'm happily married or I'm married and everything is okay. He's a professor, but he seems to have a really good relationship with the female students in his class. Why is he always working late? Ladies, ask the tough questions. We're a partnership, aren't we? We're in a partnership. Let me know. The investigator will tell you that he's meeting some guy over yonder with some child. We had a story here in the Detroit area a few years ago about a well-known chef who turned up missing. I mean, his family were on Facebook, how he's the nicest guy, missing because he was having sex with a 16-year-old and paying her pimp to have sex with a child. And the reason he got killed was he insisted he had paid money to have sex with her without a condom. A 16-year-old. Are you hearing me? But his family and friends said he was the best thing since sliced bread. He was an honorable man, a family man who takes care of his children. But he was having sex with somebody else's child. Hello, somebody. So this tool called child then get a warrant to go search the person's home. If they can find it and they confiscate it, well, we have a case that they can prosecute and get these people off the streets. This is a good tool to have. Know that cases of violence, they felt that their laptops were not being policed as much because they're not at work. You don't graphic videos, right? It lets officers search by country, state, city, or county, and it displays a ranked list of the internet addresses downloading the most problematic files. The tool looks for images who like to have sex with children, apparently like prepubescent children. So the children who are not developed yet. You know, as adulthood sets in, teenagers, their bodies transform and so on. Well, they apparently like having sex with prepubescent children. It is developed by the coalition that I told you about and the Child Rescue Coalition. It gives it free to law enforcement agencies. And it's used in 95 countries, including Canada, the UK, and Brazil. Since 2010, it has trained about 12,000 law enforcement investigators. And get this, as much as that is pervasive, given to all states for free and given to 95 other countries, it's still just a drop in the bucket, because what the experience is that people who download child pornography are very slick. Don't think they just have your regular MacBook, yeah, and they use a regular browser. They have firewalls and they become more adept at navigating the intricacies of using the web to access the data. A lot of people who use child pornography and who view child pornography and who trade in and traffic in child pornography, a lot of those people use not regular web, they use the dark web, they use the deep web, because there is more. It is the sickest thing. It is disgusting. It is wicked. It is perverse. Yes, you're not going to like those terms, but it is what it is. Let's not beat around the bush about this. Child pornography is happening right under our noses. It could be happening with a guy next door. Years ago, I was on the line, and she was seeking spiritual counseling and spiritual guidance. And I kid you not, she confessed that her largest group of purveyors, of customers, were white men 45 and up who were affluent. They were the ones who wanted the weirdest, freakiest things to happen sexually. And all she was doing was using her voice on the phone. Shout out to her, how powerfully say something that created a picture in their minds. But they were the ones who had the freakiest desires, seeking to get out of it because her conscience clicked in. She has small children. And for the life of her, she couldn't reconcile having small children, and at the same time, she had counseling, and that's how that happened. I was shocked and disgusted. I could not believe that such a thing could happen. It's crazy how stuff works. You would be surprised. And I was shocked too, because she said, you'd be surprised who does this. It's much like I operate a shelter for human trafficking victims. And a few years ago, one of my first experiences was when the inhabited them seeking sexual services and how deviant it was, and the groups of people and the occupations that required more deviant behavior. People are deviant, and these are the most upstanding people in any community. They sit down and look you straight in the eye while, as soon as they can, they have a date to go perform sexually violent acts on human beings. Cases of children being sexually abused, they were not abused by other children. They're being abused by adults. I was reading a story on the web recently where a woman said that she was suing a daycare center or a school. Remember that story? And because one of the children in the classroom performed kind of raped her child. He performed oral sex on her son. And it was of concern to the people at the school, because what does that sound like to you? How does a 4-year-old know how to do that? Because somebody did it to him. People are in their homes having sex while children are watching. You don't shut the door. Everybody tries to go to sleep, make sure they're asleep, but you shut the door and lock the door so they don't come in. I have daughters too. When they were little, I told them about good touch, bad touch. And there's a grand age of 6 years old that everybody has to go in the bathroom by themselves. And you have to teach them. Yes, I'm outside the bathroom, but I can't come in. It's one of the things of being a parent, because you enjoy, playing with them in the water and stuff like that. But after a while, you have to tell them it's not okay for an adult to be in the bathroom with you. And any adult who comes in, you need to let mommy know you're not allowed. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to talk to them. And then you can't rub lotion on them anymore. And then, why do I have to do that? And then they come out the bathroom and they don't want to put lotion on. And you're like, you have to moisturize. Ashy. Well, what is ashy? It's when your skin looks funny. Well, why does it look funny? Why is it dry? I kid you not. Childhood is amazing. Children are so amazing. You don't want them to be harmed. I kid you not. The story I read is so disturbing about, and in this particular story, this dude is in Boca Raton. His name is Tate Christopher Cooper. Check this out. He's a retired high school history teacher. 600 photos and videos depicting child sexual abuse. This man is a retired high school history. And you know how they're led to his home because they use the system, the child protection system that scans file sharing network. So how it works is it's actually really not on the person's computer. It's on file sharing networks, right? And file sharing networks shows what? IP addresses. You remember when, I think it was after 9/11, that our computers had IP addresses? They made sure every device, every electronic device. So your iPad, your tablets, even the ones you buy in the store for $50. And so it's unique to that device. So if you were ever to look into your mobile account, say you have one of these mobile carriers, AT&T, Verizon, have you ever really gone into it and seen how it stores your devices? Do you know that they also have a record of all the devices you've used? So what this technology does is it scans all the file sharing networks that perhaps have this information, and it can tell which IP address, the IP addresses that downloaded, they're then able to go visit the person. And here comes your life being destroyed because your husband, who professes to love you, you've been married for 28 years, you even have grown children. Suddenly, your husband, of course, you're going to say you have the wrong person. That cannot be true. But he's just standing there looking because he's as guilty as they come. We should have a roll call of all these people who are child programs monitored, and he didn't know. And it searches for 200 terms linked to child sexual abuse. So, you know, they have specifics. He's giving me a headache. I better hurry up. It's like they keep going back and back. They can't get enough. It's crazy. Law enforcement encounter these things. You don't just want the person to go to jail. You want them to be sent away and never come back, because you don't want them to continue to inflict harm, because they're not, for some reason, these people are not rehabilitated easily. For some reason, they're repeat offenders. They describe it, it's just like a drug, like cocaine, or if you've ever been addicted to a substance, it's still in you, so you have to fight the urge. Well, it's the same thing with these people. How many people who are child offenders, who are sex offenders, but they come out of jail and they catch them watching kids? You're not supposed to be near a school, but there they are doing a peeping Tom thing or looking through people's bedrooms. So they don't have to do that anymore because they might show up on your Ring camera. So they definitely are going on the internet and typing in www. Let me look for what I want. It happens across all socioeconomic lines. You have people like Jeffrey Epstein, who gets paid hundreds of thousands, who paid him. He probably kept a file. You were stupid if you walked up into Jeffrey Epstein's house to have sex with that 12-year-old teenage 12-year-old twins, because he must have had a file on you. But he was paying you $200,000, so you thought that effectively bought his silence. Yeah, he's not going to rat you out, but in the event that he got caught, he had you on film. No wonder he's killed. And that's Jeffrey Epstein, who has wealthy clients. What about the regular dude down here in the street? What about Joe Blow out there, who's just sitting on his laptop or using his cell phone to scour the web? What about some guy who says, you know what, there's a family down there, they don't got nothing going on. I can go take all their kids, put them in a house, and man, we can make some money by selling pictures on the web. People do that. It is the craziest thing. People do that. So we have to have technology that is able to scan and protect these children, because their friends are doing it and you want a favor done, but you know that guy, it's much like in the way some people will tell their kids, go be nice to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown likes to look at people. Mr. Brown likes to look at kids. He also likes to touch them. You send your child to go mow the lawn next door, but Mr. Brown likes to touch your son's hand. And your son comes back and says, he's creepy. He makes me feel funny. Listen. He asks your son, what kind of sports do you play? Show me how you play ball. Looking at your son's little body walking around is no longer talking. Amen. Sounds like vigilantes, and well, I leave it in your hands. Because you have to ask yourself the question, I can't afford to let him continue having access to my child. The damage has already been done, and the damage is irreversible. I think we need to come to terms with the long-term effects of these kinds of trauma. We need to understand that the mental and emotional trauma that arises from physical acts of violence that are done to human beings are even more damaging in the long term. And some it does not offer any kind of remedy to the person. I've had that situation. We're talking about it. All it did was reignited it. Look, it's very simple and personal. The damage, the physical trauma, that person has to live with it. But it's there. And it has triggers. They don't like to be touched. Not because they're an empath. Yeah? But because being touched reminds them of a time when somebody else touched them and hurt them. And you're looking at people and saying they're weird, they're this, but you don't know their story. And when the rest of us seek to educate the public about the harmful, we don't open our eyes and we don't open our ears and open our minds to understand and receive the information. You think it's accusatory. But why should it land on you as being accusatory if you're not guilty? If you've never looked at a child, but he had a problem that I don't know if it's fixed, so I'm not going to trust him around my child. You can keep him around yours if you like, but I'm not going to trust him around mine. Here in Michigan, a woman, her father was a pastor. Just goes to tell you that religion is not a panacea for stupidity. Yeah? Just because you love God also gave you wisdom and insight. So are you going to now look at other people and just say, oh, for the love of God, they say they're rehabilitated, so I cut them? It doesn't work that way. This woman's father advocated for the release of a man who had killed his pregnant girlfriend. He killed his pregnant girlfriend when she was almost 8 months pregnant. He went to jail for it. So her father went and advocated for him to, having served some time, to be released. He was paroled. He started dating the pastor's daughter, who happened to have 2 older children. She lived with him for a period of time, and she even had children with him. One day, he killed all 4 of her children and tied her up so she could watch it. Then he called the police to tell the police what he had done. Her father was still alive. I hope wherever he is, he has to live with that for the rest of his life. Was he rehabilitated? We gotta accept there are some things that belie the human ability to overcome. People change if they want to. Some people hide and do not change. If a man killed his pregnant girlfriend, why do you think that you should have him around your children? He killed all 4 of her children, including the ones she had with him. I am saying to you today that people who perpetrate sexual violence against children are a danger to my children, and you should think they're a danger to yours. We should support law enforcement in their efforts to eradicate it from our society and our communities. We should. And we should all be actively looking at people who engage with our children. What kind of contact do we allow people to have with our children? There has to be boundaries. Talk to your children about good touch, bad touch until they're old enough to understand. Let them know that anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, knowing that the coach is touchy feely and is a free willy when it comes to that. You can't ignore the signals. It is right there in front of you. It's right there in front of us. Some of these folks are sexual predators. It's as naked as daylight, but they smile and are charismatic. So that's the fact. If that is your case and that's the story, then it is what it is. Child pornography is real. Let's support organizations that can try to eradicate it. And let's support law enforcement. If you see something, say something. Speak up if you know something. You might just stop another child from being mutilated. And lives were lost on that day. And we support the military and law enforcement in their efforts to rid our society under more. Thank you so much. Be blessed. Mhm.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
This stupid computer is